everybody. Welcome back for another dispatch. And I thought I'd read from this book, The Spiritual Dynamic in Modern Art by Charlene Spretnak. Art History Reconsidered, 1800 to the Present. I've got this memory somewhere a while back. I read from this, and I'm not sure if that's the case. But in any case, I'm going to read what she writes about a couple of faves. And I think I might have read the section about Blake, but I'm not sure. The font is a little small for me, but I've got new prescriptions for my glasses and I can do it in decent light. Hopefully yes, we are. Okay. And I recommended it to a friend and she told me recently, well, actually, was it yesterday, whatever it was, she looked online and it's extremely expensive. I'm sorry about that. When I got it, it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't like it is now. Hopefully we'll have more copies that'll be less expensive. Because it's pretty cool. I mean, she goes through all these different painters and sources, like how they're actually had all, religious or spiritual stuff going on. Like, I don't know what she said, like 250 painters or something, or artists. And then she's got this whole section in the back. Uh, what does she call it? Making the case. And she's about all these different art exhibitions. She's making the case that there's this powerful stream of spirituality in modern art. And that it's been sort of written out by art criticism, which is curious. What is that about? Uh, what's his name? James. Here goes the memory. You know. I'll think of it. I'll put it in the notes. Oh, Lord. He also has a book about that, the absence of the spiritual in criticism, in the conversation, in the public conversation. Like, what is that about? It's changing, of course. But okay, we can talk about that another time. So here we go. Blake, William Blake. As a child, William Blake, 1757 to 1827, reported to his parents that he saw a tree full of angels and later saw angels walking in a field. He was enrolled at age 10 in a drawing school for 4 years, followed by a 7-year apprenticeship in the shop of the engraver, to the Society of Antiquaries, and to the Royal Society. During this period, Blake began collecting inexpensive prints of his favorite artists, including Raphael, Michelangelo, and Dürer. At age 22, by then a professional engraver and printer, he was accepted to study painting at the Royal Academy of Arts. The Academy's founding president was the prominent painter Sir Joshua Reynolds, who delivered a series of discourses during those years, which were published. He delineated the requirements of the aesthetic that was pleasing to Enlightenment tastes. Nature is a serene, orderly backdrop for human purposes and should be depicted as such. The true artist should reduce the variety of nature to the abstract idea. Singular forms should give way to ideal forms. Art, quote, art must get above particularities and details of every kind, unquote. Neoclassical propriety and calm must prevail in landscapes, portraits, and historical subject matter. On reading these principles in Reynolds' third discourse, Blake erupted in vehement disagreement as indicated by his marginalia, quote, a lie, a folly, damn the fool, nonsense. Singular and particular detail is the foundation of the sublime. Every eye sees differently. As the eye, such the object. End quote. Blake felt that every singularity becomes more sublime each time it is perceived, thereby continuing to reveal its profoundly unique quality. Blake withdrew from the Royal Academy of Art after a short time and continued to develop his style in watercolors and as an engraver. Between 1788 and 1820, Blake created many illuminated books in which he raged against the mechanistic neoclassical worldview and against institutional Christianity in order to present his visionary sense of a true Christianity that joins individual freedom with a passionate embrace of the meaning of Christ. In Blake's rejection of ecclesiastic authority in order to find authentic Christianity, he may be seen to anticipate Kierkegaard by 50 years. But the milieu in which Blake's thinking developed was London's energetic subculture of nonconformist churches and prophetic groups in the late 18th century. Some of these groups were direct descendants of the radical sects active during the Civil War of the 1640s, who, inspired by the revolutionary quest for greater political freedom, declared their own versions of greater religious freedom that the Church of England allowed. In the 1790s, the newly expanded political freedom won in the American and French revolutions sparked expansive thoughts. In addition, Blake's mother and her first husband had been members of the Moravian Church in London. Blake himself became interested for a time in the Swedenborgian New Jerusalem Church, but he soon turned against Swedenborg, a man of, quote, mechanistic talents, and the institutionalizing of his ideas, which he mocked in The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, 1790 to 1793. He was also influenced by the mystical writings of Jacob Boehme, alchemy, Gnosticism, Kabbalah, and Norse, Irish, and Hindu mythology. Foremost, he conveyed the visions that arose in his mind. Blake saw everywhere the pernicious damage wrought by the mechanistic worldview, which he called single vision and Newton's sleep. For Blake, he who sees the infinite in all things sees God. He who sees the ratio only sees himself only. He did not deny Newtonian science with its fixation on the vegetable universe, but situated it as a small part of the far larger transcendent and eternal realm. His phrase, the dark satanic mills, refers to the imperial centers that impose rationalist, reductionist, objectivist thought, Satan's mathematic homes. Holiness, font small. As if that were all there is. How could one escape this fallen state with its mind-forged manacles? Blake assured, if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. To convey both his critique and his spiritual vision, Blake created an entire mythology, which he presented in his prophetic epics. For example, the book of Urizen, 1794. Features a dour, hoary patriarch named Urizen. Your reason. Oh, your reason. Urizen. And she writes in parentheses, so we understand, your reason. Who personifies single vision and rules over the scientistic culture. He is also the demiurge, the god of wrath and jealousy, old nobodaddy of the idolatry of science, the giver of moral laws. Blake considered religious laws to be as stultifying as Newton's universal laws. Living under such conditions, our infinite senses have so atrophied that we can barely hear true harmonies or make out the visions of eternity. Inevitably, despair results. Elsewhere, Blake proposed that the way beyond the mechanistic, mundane shell is through realizing that the deep powers of the imagination and of the spiritual coalesce. Elsewhere, Blake proposed that the way beyond the mechanistic, mundane shell is through realizing that the deep powers of the imagination and of the spiritual coalesce, as does art and true religion. The Bible is the greatest code of art, and Jesus and his apostles and disciples were all artists. He saw man and woman, he was a feminist, as expressed in Daughters of Albion, as forms of divine life who can return Jesus to their hearts and recover their imaginative powers of transcendent perception. The single vision of Newton, Locke, and Bacon was responsible, Blake held, for art like that of Joshua Reynolds. Blake's own art is fluid and often charged with dynamic energy. He insisted on the importance of the bounding outline and drew human figures with bulging musculature to indicate spiritual strength. To print his work, Blake invented a new technique called relief etching. In the final step of the process, he and his wife added a tinted wash to the printed page. He called his sumptuous illuminations portable frescoes. Blake's new style of poetry, new forms of art, and idiosyncratic reinvention of Christianity amount to an oeuvre that is sui generis. He was not part of the Romantic movement. Their ideal of participatory consciousness as a mode of deep communion with nature was repugnant to Blake. He attacked Wordsworth's poetry on these grounds, commenting on his notes, "Natural objects always did and now do weaken, deaden, and obliterate imagination in me." Elsewhere, he wrote, "Nature teaches nothing about spiritual life, but only natural life." Blake was a mystic whose art inspired many artists, not least for its range of invention. As Arthur Simon, Symon, noted in Blake, 1907, he was, quote, "the first utterer in modern times," unquote, of the message of emancipation from reality through the shaping spirit of imagination. Cool? Blake. All right. I'll throw in some images. That's it. Okay. Take care, everybody. See you next week. Keep making stuff. Stay cool. Draw, paint. Bye-bye.